All right, mic check. This is anatomy and physiology here at Arizona Western College, uh, a online office hours for my BIO201 classes of the spring of 2024. This is March the 6th, 2024, and we are entering let me see if I can open this kind of by this schedule here. We are entering week 8 of the semester. So rounding out the halfway point of the semester here, you can see that we'll really focus on the left side of the screen there, where we're going over the skeletal system. So the big focus here is the skeletal system. Bone tissue, chapter 6, which is pretty intense. We'll talk about some of the physiology of bone, and then the skeletal system particularly, so the different bones of the body. And we'll go over kind of the topics as it relates to the different bones of the body, in which you guys should highlight and note in these next chapters as it relates to chapters 6, 7, and 8. So we'll take a look at that here in the next couple of minutes. But we're here in week 8 of the semester. We're getting ready to round out the first half of the semester, and then we get into bones, muscles, spring break, and the nervous system to round out the semester here. So the keys here, they'll jump into your canvas. The keys here are going to be focusing on some of the main topics of chapters 6, 7, and 8, where we're looking at the bone physiology, bone tissue, histology, and kind of the components of what makes up bones. And then in chapters 7 and 8, we're really just specifically looking at each of the bones. So in your canvas here, I'll show you what the new material is from my online class here. You'll see if we go to modules, that's really where your class lives. Here in modules, what you'll see is that chapters 6, 7, and 8, exam date will open on March 21st, 2024. Wait, the lab's not there. Okay, I'll put the lab, I'll make sure it's there. But you know what? Let me do this. I made a mistake. Publish it. Where's the lab? Let's go to assignments. There it is, the axial skeleton. Let me publish it into your modules. Okay, let's take a look at the highlights of these next couple of chapters that we're looking at as it relates to the skeletal system. Bones first, about what is bones, what are they comprised of, what's the chemistry of these bones, what is the dynamic activity of these bones, meaning that bones grow, right? They grow lengthwise, they grow wider. And so how does that occur? Where does that occur? What are the types of cells that are in bone? And so here, chapters 6, 7, and 8 are what we'll be looking at, and we'll kind of start in chapter 6. And so, as you take a look into the chapter, you'll see, of course, there's the introduction, and there's quite a few different videos here related to the bones, but we can see that the big topics are going to be related to the functions of bones. So, what do bones do in terms of their function? We kind of get an idea that, yeah, it's responsible for our structure, right? What would we be without bones, right? Like a we'd be just a sack of tissues. It provides protection to our brain, spinal cord, our internal organs. So there's these bones that are located in our medial region, the more towards our axial region, and they protect us versus bones that are related to movement. So there's bones that are related to protection as well as movement. And then one little known or one not nearly talked about topic is the production of blood cells. So it's called hematopoiesis, and that's a function of bones as a tissue as well. The next part is the parts of a bone. So parts of a long bone is probably the more complex component of it, but really the parts of I'll zoom in there for you. So really, the again, this is chapter 6. The parts of a bone. Of a long bone is a little bit more uh, complex, I should say, right? Because there's a few more parts. Really, a flat bone, and you should know the structure of a flat bone as well. But a flat bone is kind of like a sandwich. It's got compact hard bone on the outside, it's got spongy bone on the inside, but a long bone like the ones on my arms, legs, are a little bit more different in terms of their structure. So you should be familiar with the structures of long bones as well as that of flat or irregular bones. The types of bones that we'll see. So what the bones are really classified by their shape. And so as you've as I've indicated already, like a long bone is longer than it is wider. There's short bones that are a little stumpy and cube shaped. There's irregular bones, so think of like the bones of your vertebrae that are kind of irregular shaped. The pelvis is an irregular bone as well. And then there's flat bones. Flat bones are like the ones on my skull or your ribs, and they're really kind of protective bones, and they're kind of flat, and they're two portions of compact bone that run parallel. So the types of bones, those bones are classified by their shape, but they're also classified by their location or their anatomy. So the bones that are located closer to the body, that make up the axial skeleton, include the skull, the vertebrae, and the bones of the sacrum. Right, rib cage is included in that as well. However, the appendicular skeleton is the part of the bone that's related to the arms and legs. And so we should be able to identify that bones are classified by their shape. And we kind of mentioned that already. You'll see that in the lecture as well as in this preview introductory video. But we'll also talk about the classification of bone related to its anatomy, the location that relates to either axial or appendicular. The structure of bone really looks more at the histology and the microscopic makeup of bone. So we look at the bone cells as well as the structure in which they make. So they arrange like the cells of bone are arranged in a pretty regular and interesting pattern, right? Like it's a regular pattern, and it looks almost like the rings of a tree. If you were cut a tree, you'd see those rings, and that is the same component that we see when we look at the makeup of the structural unit of bone. So the single structural unit of bone is referred to as the osteon, and it really looks like a tree with its rings running concentrically. So, concentric rings. So, uh, and that is what we call the osteon, right? And there's different parts of the osteon that we should be familiar with. And then finally, as we saw with like skin, we'll start to look at some of the pathology that can occur as it relates to bone. Specifically, we'll look at bone as it relates to healing and how how a fracture may occur and how someone can heal from a fracture. So bone injuries and bone healing are going to be a big component of chapter 6 as well. So chapter 6 is really like I mentioned here, we're talking about bone as a tissue, we're talking about bone as an organ, but it's really about the physiology and the complexity of bone in terms of its physiology, right? What makes it up in terms of chemistry, what is its function. And then for the next couple of chapters, you'll see that we'll talk about the zoom out a little bit for you guys here. We'll talk about the bones specifically. And now, what do I mean by the bones specifically? Well, yeah, you're going to have to be able to identify each of the 206 bones that are make up the human body. But not only will be able to identify the 206 bones, but you'll also be asked to identify monumental or common landmarks of each of these bones as well. So if you look at we won't go to the slides here, but we'll take a look at the outline. And what the outline provides you is this. This idea in chapters 7 and 8 specifically, what you're going to see is that the concept of bony landmarks. These are bumps, holes, ridges that cover the bones, and they're called bony markings, bony landmarks. They represent points of muscle attachments where bones might meet each other, and form joints. They are actually openings as well for nerves or vascular structures like arteries. And so you can see that you're going to be able to define what these different projections are, like a tuberosity or trochanter. But as soon as you get past that, you're going to see that each of these bones, like the frontal bone, has a number of different components attributed to it. So a sinus, there's a space, there's an open space located in the frontal bone, and you should be able to identify it if I pointed to you in a picture. The supraorbital ridge is another feature there that you should be familiar with. And again, that's located on the frontal bone, which is on the skull. The glabella is kind of the ridge located in between your eyebrows. So if you kind of feel on your forehead there's that ridge in between your eyebrows and where it's kind of almost a bump. That is called your glabella. And so you should be able to identify these different features on any of the bones specifically. And so I've provided a number of resources. Let's go to let me reiterate this point one more time and hit it just one more time here for you before we move to the next topic. But if we get out of, let me just click out of this one more time. If we go to chapter 8 is just all about the bones of your arms and legs. So really, we should be from starting on this. The reason I'm telling you this is I want you to start on the rote memorization component of this, which is the chapters 7 and 8, the identifying the different bones of the body. Now, start making flashcards, and here's some of the resources that you'll use. Right just like I mentioned here in your outline. You'll see, right into the appendicular skeleton, and we'll use the scapula, your shoulder bone, for an example here. But if you zoom in here, I'll zoom into the picture here, you'll see right there, the scapula, the shoulder bone. You should be able to identify, if I give you a shoulder bone, or if I give you a picture of the shoulder bone, if it's a right or a left. You should be able to identify each of these features: the coracoid process, the acromion process, the spine of the scapula, the supraspinous fossa, the infraspinous fossa, the glenoid fossa, the subscapular fossa, the subscapular notch, the vertebral border, the axillary border, the inferior angle, and the superior angle. These are all features of the scapula that we should be familiar with, just like it's like a map. So let's stay on the scapula here. And let me show you the resources that I've provided so that you guys can do this. I have first the list, right? The list is what you have right here, the master outline. This is it's in the outline. So if you have a colleague or a student, or if you yourself are inspired enough to make a list here, right, to extract this list and identify the parts of the scapula, I'm sure you don't even have to do that. Let's see what happens if I go to Quizlet. Getting a little off topic here, but let's say we can call them bony landmarks. You can call them bony bones of the body, bones of the skull, bone markings. You can see that right there. They're called bone markings. See what happens. 12 terms, 15 terms. Let's go big. I'm gonna have a lot. Let's hit it. A groove. Oh, so these are the names, but they don't have the pictures there. Okay, it's okay because I'm going to show you how you guys are going to start to study this. So we'll keep that there. I'll keep the outline there. But again, if we go to your canvas, what you'll see is I've provided some resources. Choose 007 is the online one I want to use right here. And the first one is this. You're going to start with biodigital, right? Biodigital is a... Let me zoom out. Let me give you the student view. But if you go to biodigital here, just under digital 3D models, there's the axial skeleton, there's the appendicular skeleton. I actually created these in biodigital. I was godfathered in years ago, so I use these as my online examples. I've embedded them into my course, and like there's not much they can do about it now. But I made this to go with each of our chapters, right? So if I give you the uh, full view here, give you the anterior view of the skull, you can see there's the parts of the bone that I've already mentioned before in previous sections, right? The supraorbital margin, the infraorbital margin. Well, the supraorbital margin and supraorbital foramen, these are both components of the frontal bone, right? The glabella is located just in between that, located, let me see if I can even mark that up right there. The glabella is right there. But needless to say, biodigital, I've embedded biodigital into your canvas. And this is a resource that you can use to identify the different bones of the skull. So all the bones of the skull, all the inside of the skull. Well, let me flip this bad boy around right there. These are all features that you can use as a study guide for you. Appendiculars. Let's stay with the scapula, right? We talked about the scapula. We're always we like the scapula here. That's going to be the feature one that we'll be talking about here. So if we click to interact with our 3D model, I don't know why I made a gray background. It wasn't that cool. But yeah, let's go to the scapula and the clavicle here. And then, as I've mentioned, remember, there's the acromion process. You've got the acromioclavicular joint featured right there, the subscapular fossa. I'm sure if we continue around here, we'll find the spine of the scapula, the infraspinous fossa, maybe even the supraspinous fossa as well. But you can see here that these are the portions of the bone. Yeah, maybe let's try it. Isolate the scapula specifically, right? There you go. Now you can start to see, right? The supraspinous fossa, the infraspinous fossa. What I didn't mention here is that there's the medial border, the lateral border. I'll show you it this way because you can't see my hand. But this is the medial border here. There's the lateral border there. There's two spine, excuse me, angles. So the superior angle, whoop, whoop, and the inferior angle right there. So again, kind of all these different parts of the, and let me move this thing here for you. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Let me exit draw. Let me go back to big screen. I just wanted to move the acromion process right there, just like that, and all that. But scapula is what we've been looking at, and you can see here that there's a biodigital 3D model here. I like this one. I created it a couple of years ago, and I've been godfathered in, so I just keep using it. Don't tell anybody. Uh, the other resource here, the other resource that I would encourage you to use, if we go to textbooks, additional resources. Now, I'll show you where it is. I'll probably make it a little bit more prevalent in your But if you went to textbook and additional resources, go ahead and scroll down a little bit. The blue link, University of Michigan website, is a website that I would encourage you to use. The other one, again, we've used BioDigital. The other one here, Anatomy Standard. So Anatomy Standard, scratch my nose. Anatomy Standard provides the pages that I use for your worksheet. So the not my online class, but my in-person class uses their online worksheet, and I use Anatomy Standard. And you can see here that it's a really vivid, it's open educational resource. So you'll see that there's these open, there's a plenty of beautiful pictures here that provide, wait for it there it is, that provide us in-depth knowledge of bones like the occipital bone. So there's the occipital bone in ex situ, so out of its connection with the rest of the skull. There's in situ, whether it's back in its place. We've got the features of that bone here, and while we're talking about it, let's just stay up on the scapula, right? So the scapula is the bone that we've been talking about here. And you can see here that the scapula has a number of different features. So whether it is the acromion process, the coracoid process, and so the original names here are in their original Greek and Latin. But if you go to the list of items, you can see there, there's the more common English terms there, the acromion angle, the coracoid process, the scapular notch, the glenoid cavity. And so you can see that those are the features that are provided here in the textbook. Excuse me, in that resource, right? That's one of them. Another one is the University of Michigan website. So this is the one that I use for your practical. So the practical is something that looks like this. I'll zoom in. Let me zoom in. Blue link images. If I click on blue link images, it takes me to a link here. And this web page was created in the time of COVID during the when the med school had to go into a more online course. And so what they've provided is both labeled and unlabeled blue link images. So if you scroll down here about halfway down, what you'll see is bones, joints, and movement. And those are the ones that I look at. You can see right there, bones, joints, and movement, overview of the upper limb, overview of the lower limb, and even like shoulder limb. I'll look at those ones in terms of the bones of the body here that are going to give us an overview as to what we want to see. And so this is, again, what I use. I should go back. Let me put it in a new tab. Put it in a new tab. Okay. And so on the labeled images, you can see, right, the portions of the body are labeled. So specifically as it relates to, again, the scapula, right, you can see there's the superior angle, there's the inferior angle, the borders, the lateral border, which is also referred to as the axillary border because it's underneath the armpit, the medial border, also referred to as the vertebral border because it's towards the vertebral column. Scroll down, you'll see there's the coracoid process, the acromion process, the subscapular notch, the subscapular fossa. Again, these bones are like a map, right? In terms of where muscles attach to, where these different attachments, where nerves and arteries emerge from, particularly as it relates to the skull. And you can start to see this that we're talking about. And there's the scapula. So I've shown you two resources so far: BioDigital, University of Michigan. Oh, I've shown you three. But BioDigital, University of Michigan, and Anatomy Standard. Of course, the last few resources that I can provide you are going to be the textbook that I've recommended. So both your OER textbook that has been provided here, both your go back to modules in the textbook chapters, specifically chapters 7 and 8. Right, both the textbook chapters have this provided for you, as well as the click on right there into the textbook. Right. It's a little bit messier. You can I don't want to say a little bit, I don't want to say messy, but you can see that they're oh, excuse me, that these features are uh all specifically pointed, and there's the textbook image of it. Again, you want to take a look at the bone like the scapula. So this isn't novel. This isn't anything that I've made up in terms of what you guys need to know for a topic like this. We'll go to chapter 8. We've been using the scapula as a theme here. So if we go to the appendicular skeleton here, take a look at the textbook. You'll see like okay, the scapula, right? So there's the scapula. I can probably zoom in a couple times there. Right, and you can see that there's the features of the scapula that we should all be familiar with. Everything from the the anterior aspect with the subscapular fossa, and the posterior aspect with the supra and infraspinous fossa. So those are the two, or one, two, three, four resources that you can use to study, and then the other two would be. Let's see if I textbook here. Right. So the Marieb and Home textbook, the one that I've also recommended, provides the same resources, except maybe in a little bit better pictures, where pictures look, yeah, very similar to something like there, right? So the same thing. These aren't new. These aren't novel. These are all the same pictures that you'll see in all of these texts, and so the names may change very slightly, but the list is there on the outline. So all that to say, start identifying the parts. This is the rote memorization part of this, right? The chapter 6 is going to be conceptual, identifying the physiology of bone. But chapters 7 and 8 are really rote memorization, identifying the different parts of a bone like a roadmap. Right. Give it a second to breathe there, but I think that was good. I wanted to really kind of hit the depth of what you're going to imagine when it comes to chapters 6, 7, and 8. So again, read a little bit of chapter 6 to start, then read a little bit of chapter 7 or chapter 8, because you want to get to identifying the parts of a bone. So start with the skull, go to the vertebral column, identify the parts of the sacrum, and then move towards the arms and legs, the scapula, the clavicle, the humerus, the radius, the ulna, the carpals, the metacarpals and phalanges, then go down to the legs. So I start practicing the different parts of the bone, not just what are the bones, but these bony markings, as they're called. What are these bony landmarks? I know you guys are going to do great. I'm encouraged. But that's going to be about our time today. We're hit about the half hour mark, so I don't want to berate the point here. So it's a pleasure as always. Good to see that everybody's continuing on through the halfway mark of the semester. Stay strong, you guys are doing great, and where it only gets better from here. We go to bones, we go to muscles, again, because the muscles are attached to these bony landmarks. So you're going to have to identify, when it's a muscle, you got to identify more than one of these bony landmarks, because it muscle starts at one and then it ends at one. So that's kind of what we're starting to identify now, right? What are the bony landmarks? And primarily, these are going to be ones that muscles attach to. And then what are the muscles that attach to that? And then as a result, what is the movement that occurs, right? So we add on to this, and it really gets start to get really fun. But let's not get too hyped. Let's not get too excited just yet. I kid. You guys take care. Best wishes. And as always, I look forward to your responses and both the homework and the assessments.